So for yet another Patreon exclusive video, I have Chris Franey from the Imagine If podcast and Ian Flint from the Journey into Mystery podcast. And we're going to be talking about it's somewhat of a comic book think piece, comic book character think piece. I came up with the question this time. And I wanted the two people that would have a vast comic book knowledge and probably outside comic book knowledge too, to weigh in on this question. It's something that really plagues me. And bear in mind, I'm going to give rankings to certain things, and it's very subjective. Like, obviously, how I feel about it is probably not the same way that other people feel about it, but this is how I feel about it. So I want you to have 3 different types of powers in your head right now, and these are your powers: a telekinetic, a master of magnetism, and an airbender. Okay? Say, now you kind of have somewhat of the same abilities in all of those, right? Like you're able to move things with your mind, essentially, like the basic of those powers. To me, a telekinetic is the most powerful out of the 3 because you don't have anything thrown on there. It doesn't have to be metal like a master of magnetism, and there doesn't have to be air like a airbender around, right? Master of magnetism is going to be the next powerful after that. And then after that is an airbender. Like, don't get me wrong, it's still very powerful, but that's how I rank them in my head.
Yeah, I could see that.
Do you go along with my premise there, Ian?
I had to bust out my whiteboard to write this down to make sure I was getting it right.
Okay.
There we go. I ranked them. You have telekinetic at number 1, you have airbenders at number 2, and you have magnets at number 3.
I mean, metal is a part of everything, almost.
But, so, I'll break it down for you. With telekinesis, the stronger you get your ability, the more you control.
Right.
So at a certain point, telekinesis turns into everything kinesis.
Okay.
Down to like an atomic level if you're that kind of nutty.
Correct.
Airbender, unless you're fighting in a vacuum, or unless you're needing to do something in a vacuum, your airbender is going to be valid.
Mm-hmm.
And magnets are the more... Like, Master of Magnetism is the only one that's dependent on something being there exclusively.
That's fair. But even, like, look, you take a look at Magneto. Even if the character that he's going up against doesn't have any metal on him, he usually finds metal in the nearby place or even in the soil to then take out his enemy.
Yeah. Or, like, a lot of iron in your blood, and he's like, "Oh, you're done."
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying.
So I get it. Hold on, I was so sure.
How do you feel, Chris?
So this is interesting. Like, okay, so we're either agreeing or disagreeing with your rankings, correct?
Right.
So
this isn't even the question yet. This is just the premise that goes into the question. Yeah.
Just establishing rules. Okay, well then, because something I think about, and I'm glad you brought up the word vacuum though. So it's like, that feels like that would be the weakness for the airbender. But I also feel like this is one of those things where it's like the Invisible Woman is the strongest character if the writer is crafty enough. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, Red Tornado, because again, like when you're giving me these powers, I think about them as people. So I'm picturing like, Jean Grey, Magneto, and Red Tornado. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I want to give that underdog a big boost. I want to make them a little bit more valid. So it's like, well, if you're an airbender, then you have the ability to manipulate air, right? So why not manipulate the air in somebody's lungs out? That's just as strong as a gut punch that's going to drop them to their knees. So it's like, if I surround that and I create kind of like an anti-vacuum where I keep the air away from you, that's going to knock you out. I mean, that's going to take down a rampaging Hulk. So it's like, okay, so that's where I could see that. But I mean, in order of the stacking, again, obviously experience is a major part of it, but I do agree with your initial ranking that it's telekinesis because that's moving anything. Metal, a Magneto, magmatician. I don't know if that's the right word, but I like that right now. Magnetician, there we go. A magnetician is like, I mean, they're going to have to bring metal to the battle, which totally makes sense for like all those pouches that Jim Lee loves to draw, because it's like, hey, let's keep a little bit here and there. You know, a handful of nails can go a long way. And then the airbender, again, I mean, if we're keeping all our battles on Earth, they do have a strong fortitude. So these are really high level powers, depending on the creativity of the, you know, of what we're going to do here. But I can see the ranking that way because, again, I feel like you can move stuff faster with your mind on the outside than you could on the inside, if that makes sense.
Okay, so then getting to the next part of the premise, still not the question. Who do you see at each one of the levels of this as the most powerful? So your most powerful telekinetic, if Chris is going with what he said earlier, is probably going to be like the Invisible Woman, right?
Well, see, I don't consider her a telekinetic. I would probably go with Jean Grey, but again, I never really looked at the invisibility power that way as like a form of telekinesis. So, but
okay,
I think I'd probably stick with Jean on that one.
So the Jean Grey, do you have someone else that you say would be the most powerful telekinetic, Ian?
I'm writing down my list so I don't lose anything. Come back to me.
Okay. So then the most powerful master of magnetism, is there someone more powerful than Magneto in your opinion, Chris?
I think the only person that comes close might be the idea of like either Polaris or Dr. Polaris from the Green Lantern villains, but I still say I think you give the edge to Magneto just because of decades of experience.
Okay. And then airbending abilities, if you don't want to pick, I assume the character's name is, I think the character's name is Aang or Ong.
It's Aang. You got it right the first time. Watch yourself, sir.
We
don't talk about M. Night Shyamalan around here.
I don't watch the show. I don't know. But like I assume since he's the last airbender, he's the most powerful.
I have opinions, but we can
so who in your guys' opinion would be the most powerful? Oh, I'm sorry, Ian, did you have someone that would be a more powerful master of magnetism?
I put a bundle of electromagnets.
Okay, well, I guess
no, because honestly, Magneto's the only one I could think of off the top of my head.
That's fair.
So actually, take it one step further. A bundle of Magnetos. If you clone him multiple times and strap him to himself,
I feel like feedback would just be terrible.
Because they would eventually end up fighting each other for supremacy.
Okay, so we're gonna stick with Magneto there in that slot. Who, in your guys' opinion, is the most powerful airbender? All I can think about in the comic book universe is probably Storm.
See, I go to Red Tornado there. I really like with him actually being an elemental, plus you get the bonus of the robotic body. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, but he's always broken. It's like, no, dude, when you break that shell, that just makes it worse because now you can't see him coming, you know?
Okay. How about you?
I am going to go with a Last Airbender universe character, and this is from Legend of Korra. We actually end up with a villain in Legend of Korra who is an airbender, and his name is Zahir. And Zahir is terrifying because he doesn't use airbending in the traditional sense in the universe, where it's very passive and like avoidance and self-defense kind of stuff. He uses it straight up to just murder you, like what Chris was talking about, like making the anti-vacuum of just like pulling the air out of you. That's like his day one thing. Like he figures out he's an airbender and he's like, oh, bet, like just you don't get to breathe now. Like that's terrifying, and that's a whole new level of mastery of airbending than we've seen in the show to that point.
Okay, good to know. So did you come up with your person on the top of your list for telekinetic?
I mean, I feel like it's cliche, but Jean Grey.
Jean Grey. Okay, you both agree on Jean Grey. I like that. That's fine.
Well, I mean, so okay, tosses it out there one real quick because I thought about it. So I almost went Cable because he is way more powerful, but that metal arm is what holds him back because that's a distractor because he's got the techno organic virus. But then if we're allowed to play with it, then that's where you say, okay, well maybe you step it up and you go with X-Man because that is Cable, but he's not held back, with that. So I think just to get another character in there, I think I might toss in X-Men if that's okay.
Fine. It's completely fine. That's all on you. Okay. So now, watcher at home, you take into account your own list of who is at these levels, and you tell me. Here's the question now. Here's the think piece. Here's where the discussion comes in. Who is more powerful? Your telekinetic at 25% power, your master magnetism at 50% power, or your airbender at 100% power?
Okay, I have a caveat to this question. Like, I need a clarification.
Okay.
If we're using Jean Grey, are we talking with or without the Phoenix Force?
I would say you have to be at her most powerful, so with the Phoenix Force.
And which costume?
See,
Blue,
I feel
like
the
green and
Phoenix
yellow,
Force-
or crimson?
Which one's more powerful?
I say without the Phoenix Force. I think she's more powerful without it. Because if
Ooh.
she's using the Phoenix Force, then you're kind of screwed because she's going to go into overkill mode, right? But
Is that not the most strong though?
well, but the thing is though, like I don't know, like I kind of look at what Tom Taylor brought to the plate when he did X-Men Red, like after they did the whole return of Jean Grey with her being dead, and it's like by her not having her telekinesis, plus you take the new experiences that she learned during Bendis's all new X-Men, she's way more powerful just as a telekinetic than she is a Phoenix. Because as a Phoenix, she's going to be destructive, and ultimately she's not going to be herself to keep her end goal in mind when it comes to what she's trying to do in the battle.
See, that brings up a different question. That's for a different episode, but like who's stronger? Intelligent Hulk or non-intelligent Hulk? Because intelligent Hulk has restrictions on himself. Like he knows he has to hold back, whereas non-intelligent Hulk doesn't hold back. So which one's stronger? But that's for a different show. Now,
I have a question.
Okay, question.
Do we consider Scarlet Witch a telekinetic?
I don't. Because I always consider Scarlet Witch to have her hex powers,
Okay.
not her MCU powers.
Okay, because like I had to make sure because I jumped on the Scarlet Witch wiki page just to double check myself, and it's a hot mess over here, y'all. So I had to ask because.
So Chris, are you still? Yeah, no kidding. Chris, are you still going with X-Man? Or are you going with Phoenix Force Jean Grey?
I'm gonna go with X-Man just because I think I'm arguing for Jean's sake, but I'll stick with X-Man. I think he'd be fun to play with.
Okay, so at these levels, who's the most powerful?
Can you throw the numbers again?
25% for your telekinetic. They're at 25% power. 50% power for your master magnetism, and 100% power for your airbender.
Okay, I think I'm ready here.
And I feel like with Ian's thrown in airbender here that I had no idea about, like him at 100% power seems pretty powerful. So
I mean, he's spooky. I'll tell you that much. But if you can follow my graph here,
yeah,
I gave it to Magneto at 50% power.
Okay, so 100% power Magneto can crack open the earth, right? Like we saw that kind of in Apocalypse, X-Men Apocalypse movie kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Sort of like you can see it happen in X-Men Ultimate X-Men comic book. Like it's the flooding and all that stuff, right? So 50% power, what's the biggest thing that he can do in your mind?
Shift the magnetic poles of the earth.
Wow. Okay.
If he's ripping the planet in half at 100%, at 50%, he should be able to go, South is now north. Figure it out, nerd.
I love it. Okay, so I love that you have a reasoning for this. Like, who's the next in the line then after Magneto?
After Magneto, I would go with Jean and leave my Airbender in number 3.
Okay, so at 100% power, why is your Airbender still the least powerful?
Because he's canonically he's the newest to his power.
Fair. Okay.
So he's the newest to his power. He has a general idea of how to hurt people with it and how to be intimidating, but he doesn't know how to live with it. He doesn't know how to do his like day to day with having this power. He doesn't know how to. He's a wrecking ball, not a scalpel.
So if he had a couple decades of experience, are you saying the outcome would be different?
A couple decades of experience, I think I would have to switch him and Jean if Jean is still only at 25%.
Yeah, that's exactly how this question goes. So
Okay.
that's good. That's good. It's good to know. All right, Chris, do you have your rankings?
So I'm using Red Tornado, Magneto, and X-Man. So I look at this stuff. So like the person who's going to come in dead last would be Nate in this case, just because I play with the idea that he's so used to being powerful all the time that this is going to throw him off a bit. It's going to be like, wait a second, what just happened? Like, so I don't think he's going to know how to compensate with that ability. I feel Magneto then comes in second because we've seen the fact that like he's not always in control of his power. It's just been one of those things where it's like when like because there was a while there, like I'm gonna say like I think the 90s X-Men, and we definitely saw in the cartoon where like he had to rely on Cortez to give him power.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things where like I feel like if you give him 50%, he's not as strong. Like he is crafty and cunning, but I don't think he's going to be able to do that whole like shifting the axis and stuff like that. I don't think he could get to that level because seeing him do it before, it took a lot of strain out of him, even when he was at higher levels of power. So I'd say my ultimate victor in this is the Red Tornado. If you're keeping him at 100% with his airbending ability and all that stuff, like he's a force to reckon with. Now all you've done is weaken the competition. I think he's stronger for it.
Cool. All right. I love the thought process on both of these. Like Chris adding in the fact that the characters recognize that they're at a lower percent power, and then not that that's wrong because I left it vague purposely, but I like the fact that he threw that in, and the fact that Ian went on this whole like experience versus ability kind of thing. Like I love that. So did you have something you wanted to add, Chris or Ian?
Was this strictly in like a who would like survive better, or was this like a combat scenario, like you have to use your ability to survive kind of thing?
More than not, it was awesome. Honestly, it was just a test of strength. Like They're not fighting each other. They're not fighting anybody in particular. I just want to know, like, as a third observer yourself, you're a Watu in this, or you're the what's the equivalent of Watu in the DC universe, Chris?
A monitor.
You're like, I wonder who's stronger out of these three people. Like, so that's how I saw it. But I love the fact that you threw it into a battle situation and you threw it into a working search situation kind of thing. So
then, I mean, that doesn't change my answers at all. I was just curious because I had gone at it with kind of a us or them kind of thought process. If it came down to it, who would survive in a situation like that? So that was where my train of thought came from.
Good. I like that's where your train of thought went. Like I was saying, my train of thought was just as a third observer.
That makes sense. So, I kind of like that more.
So this is just a question that's always been plaguing me. Like the idea that, to me, a telekinetic is the most powerful, like, because they can move anything. And even Ian hit on it earlier, like all the way down to the atomic level. If they're powerful enough, they can literally move your DNA around, like, kind of thing. But as you go down, like it's all the same. It's being able to move things with your mind, and using the wind current to move something with your mind is almost the same power. So I love the fact that Chris is like, well, I can just pull the air out of their lungs and they're down. Like to me, when Superman fought the Hulk, why didn't he just take him to the moon and thus be done? Like they fought in the Grand Canyon. Why didn't he just go to a place where there's no oxygen? Like that's the kind of thing. That's how you take out the Hulk.
I mean, you just need to take him not even to the whole moon. Just take him to like high atmosphere.
I mean, I feel like if you're holding the Hulk in just a spaceless void, he would squirm to the point where he gets out and falls to Earth. But if you're on the moon, he has the false idea of he's stable kind of thing.
But now we've learned if you kick the Hulk out into space, he just comes back as a gladiator.
True, too. You can't just.
And he's ready to rip the world in half.
So yes, thank you for indulging me on this question, you two, and I can't wait to get into more of these with you. So for Geek Elite Media's Patreon, always remember to geek
out.